You're listening to Rein with Ash and Josh.
Stress is over.
Right, welcome back to the Rein podcast with Ash and Josh. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, you will clearly see we have moved. We are now in our new setup. So thank you guys for joining us. And today we have an absolutely wonderful guest with us. We have Rhiannon Amber, who is an equestrian business specialist and consultant, also host of the Equestrian Business podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an absolute honour for you guys to have me here now. I'm joking.
It really is. Honestly, it is. And it's nice that you come in. You're the first person to experience this lovely new environment.
Yeah, guys, like you need to do a video tour of this. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it'll be all of 30 seconds of spin around.
So how we got in touch was you actually reached out to, well, I think it was both the Rein It In podcast and the Half Step platform, and sort of spoke about what you were doing, and it sounded so interesting when I read through it that I was like, we need to have a podcast and discuss this. Sort of since then, I've listened to your podcast, and what I've always found so interesting, obviously when it comes to anything equestrian related, normally I avoid it like the plague because there is zero interest for me whatsoever. I don't find it interesting, but I've listened now to every single one of your episodes, and I would genuinely say it shocked me at how informative it is, and I really enjoyed it. Like I was listening to all of them in the gym earlier today. I listened to the last 4 or 5, and I've got to say it's like some of your comparisons that you've done on how simplifying that you've done when you're talking about marketing strategies and how you think that people assume that marketing equals sales. I was like, wow, I genuinely learned things while listening to your podcast. So I've got to say it's absolutely amazing what you're doing.
So for the background of it, tell the listeners, how did you get into sort of doing what you're doing with business consultation and specialists? What's your background in it?
So it's such a random story about how I got into it. So worked in an office. I worked with horses when I was left college. I went to Bishop Burton, studied horses all my life, and then was like, you know what, there's no money in this. I'm not earning any money. I'm not getting anything. And I'm working from 5 a.m, platting up, going out, competing, and then just being fobbed off by horrible yard owners. And I was like, you know what, I don't like horses anymore. It put me right off. So I kept my own horses, hobby horses, went out, competed myself. I'm also dressage diva, not quite as cool as you. But from then on, I was like, right, let's get a proper job, go into an office and work my way up into management teams and stuff like that. And then randomly, I ended up managing 2 strip clubs and then managing a chain of strip clubs, which was pretty cool. And while I was there, I worked with a business consultant, and he was really, really cool. And I was like, I could do that. I could fully do that. So did a business degree, did some marketing qualifications, and a few years later, here we are.
Wow, that is quite a completely different out there to what most people would be. I rate that. I think how you've put those two together is, I think, 100%. I really respect that, because equestrian side, it seems to be very ABC, and it always has been. Either you're in the family of it, you go down to it, and you that chain is passed along. Whereas you had a passion for something, you then discovered another passion for it, and then you just put the two together, which we actually seem to find quite a bit, where people just go away from the equestrian industry a little bit and come back to it with a completely new perspective.
So, when I went to college, because before I went to college, my mum managed a riding school, so I've always been horses since I was really, really little. But I found that everybody that who was on my college course, none of them are working in the industry. I think one maybe works at a racing yard, and the rest of them are having kids, working in a supermarket, working in an office, or gone on to start a dog walking business. And not many of them do anything equestrian based.
It's scary to think that there is no sort of longevity. Even when it comes to, we talk to different riders that are being put off by the way the industry is, how it's not adapting to the 21st century. Businesses like yourself, I imagine you experience firsthand. But for people listening, what is an equestrian business consultant?
So what I do is I come into the business because I find a lot of equestrian business owners are fantastic at what they do. Really good at producing horses, really good physios, really good saddle fitters, really good farriers. Now when I say to them, well, what's your average transactional value? They go, oh, what? When I say, what's the equity in your business? They say, what? What's that? Why do I care about that? And when they want to bring in clients, so a lot of people at the moment are qualifying as body workers, physios, that kind of thing. but they don't know how to bring any clients into their business, because they'll create like a little graphic on Canva, they'll create a little advert, and then they'll post it on Facebook, and then they hear the crickets and they get no clients. So they pester all of their friends, and their friends kind of guilt buy from them, and they don't really get anywhere, and they end up falling back into that 9-to-5 trap.
Yeah.
So that is why I've sort of started and gone into what I do.
And how did you find it on the parallel to it, starting your business up? Because it is, you essentially teach these people the best strategies going forward with it, but you yourself would have had to have jumped through the rings, the circles of getting there. And how was that journey for you?
Do you know, it was really difficult. Before I actually went into specifically equestrian business consulting, I did universal business consulting for like plumbers. I think I worked with like an estate agent. I worked with loads of different types of businesses, because I have experience in loads of businesses, from like dentistry to the strip clubs to the riding school that my mum managed. And I realised actually there's like one reoccurring thing that goes on here, and there is one kind of one-fits-all formula. And I'm not saying that I have cookie-cutter methods that anybody can adapt, but I feel like every business needs to work on generating leads, converting leads, increasing the average amount that people spend, encouraging repeat custom, and like looking at your profit margin and how you can boost it and how you can create more money in your business.
One of the points that I heard in your podcast that I found so interesting, and you said it's easier to get repetitive customers, so repeat buys, than it is to find new clients. And I was like, that's so true. Like, I was like, that makes so much sense. I was like, consistently, obviously, where it comes in with what we do with Half Step is obviously number one thing is you're consistently trying to grow and expand the business. Whereas I'd probably say a lot of what we've done is trying to grow. Like, it made me take a step back and go, oh, we probably have like could do more with repeat buys. And I was like, I've never looked at it in that way. No,
And I guess as well, for us, it's one, how big is your team? How many hours in a day do you have to do it? And what have you got to prioritise? And yeah, repeat buys is definitely something that we should and need to prioritise more, is because we do so much outreach marketing. And it's fantastic. I think because of what we do, we're very lucky with the outreach marketing. What it brings in, it almost cancels out the urgency to get the repeat buys in. But if we actually focus some time on that, how much more elevation we could bring to that structure, there's no telling the difference it could make.
I was saying, it highlighted a massive weakness that I was like, wow, okay, that's really, really interesting. And also, I bet when Ash said marketing as well, that you hated that terminology.
Oh, really?
No, yeah. Not at all.
I'm going to get a glass of water thrown at me.
No, for me, it's all about empowering people. So it's not about saying, you know what, your marketing's really terrible, you're doing a bad job of it, because it's not practical. Like when someone's riding, you're teaching someone to ride, you don't just go, you're doing that wrong, you're really bad at this, because you're just going to kill the passion for it. You want to work with people and be like, no, that's really good, but have you thought about this? You want to plant the seeds of ideas, which is why I think my consulting stands out a little bit from other people because of that. Because I'm not coming in to do the work for you. And a lot of people come to me and be like, oh, can you fix this? Can you get me 3,000 customers? I'm like, yeah, I can. I'm not gonna. I've already built my business. I'm not building yours for you as well.
I guess that's the thing as well. People, they don't want to learn from the ground up as well. They just want people to come in and do it. But you really need to know the ins and outs of your business for it to function. It's all even down to like business language. There's so many different people. I myself had to learn it. Because I never went to business school. Early days, it wasn't so bad, but as businesses start to grow, you start looking at words like forecasting and turnover and the profit margins and float, and you're like, I resemble that to the Titanic, which it didn't end well. So there's I know a dreadful comparison, but it's true. People have to learn from the ground up, and I guess that's as well. You probably have some element when you go into these businesses as well. Their education and knowledge isn't that extensive.
That's exactly why I do what I do, because that's why I picked this industry. So before, like I say, I was working with everybody else. And then I thought, hang on, there's an industry that I know inside and out that could really, really use my help. So that's why I focused on equestrian business owners, because I don't know about you, like how many yards have you worked on where you haven't signed an employment contract? Or sick days aren't a thing?
I think I've signed one contract in my life working for someone else.
And it's probably like pulled off Google and it's not fit for purpose.
I actually have to say, to the people that I signed a contract for, they were spot on.
Oh, fantastic.
they had numerous other businesses. So that is what makes the difference, is that they actually were business savvy rather than what you would say is a stereotypical rider or owner or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my mission, is to bring business education to people who have never gone to business school. Because I mean, I went to business school, and when I started building my business, if I was to go back really early and pull out all my archive posts, because they're still there, I just archived them on my old account. Yeah, I cringe looking at my old marketing, and I was like, I wonder why it wasn't working. Is it not plainly obvious? But yeah, massive tweak around. So even going to business school, even studying marketing for ages, like I was hitting a brick wall, and I was like, why is it not working? Why am I not getting clients? And then it was applying that common sense strategy. So like, I don't know about you guys, when you want trying to watch a YouTube video, and you're trying to watch Rein on YouTube, and you get hit with that double unskippable advert, how far to the back of your head do your eyes roll? You don't like adverts.
No. Funny you should say this ad is now sponsored.
But you naturally don't like them.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true.
Yeah, like it ruins like the podcast or whatever you're watching. It does ruin it, and I think that is something that we've slowly started to think about adjusting in the way that we put ourselves out on social media, the way that we want to be seen, because we were getting to a point that we were seen as one-dimensional, and actually our public persona was probably affecting our brand.
Actual work. Yeah. And this is why we sort of changed down to the podcast stuff. And while riding topless for you in the summer is lovely, and I can, because of my acting background, can create comedy skits, there is only so far that can really go from a business sense, where you are potentially, if say down the line we want to put together a pitch deck and send that out to investors, and they go, fantastic, what does the social medias look like? And they don't know us for Adam, they don't really know the industry, they just say have a load of capital that they want to put into it, but they just want to know that the sort of like the people that are behind it, and that's what they see, then it just doesn't align with actually what the mission statement is. And that's likewise to brands that want to say reach out and work with us. Personally, I mean, we're very lucky that we work with closely with quite a few very respected brands in the industry, ones that we've worked with personally from a half step perspective and a personal point, and we've grown personal relationships with them, so they sort of understand that content, but we've not had to, with that, been lucky to justify it. We've known them to sort of let them understand it.
Well, they've known our off-camera persona, which makes a massive difference. I think that comes down to it, is everyone that, I like to think that everyone we do meet goes, yeah, you're completely nothing like where you are on camera. Podcast is probably a little bit more closer to the truth of who we are, because we can sit down and have long format conversations about who we are and our own opinions and personalities come across, rather than a 30-second video of here's the new wig I bought and here's the new character.
I think that's so important though. Like, if you listen to my podcast, you'll know that I'm so big on being yourself and being authentic. And if you actually watch my podcast from start to finish, you'll notice that I've come out more. And it's less, before I can't say they were scripted, but they were bullet pointed and I had a topic. Whereas now I just go in, it's unscripted, and I just speak what's on my mind. And I think it's so important for you to show your own personality, because if people want to invest in you and they think that you two are, shirts and ties and very formal, but when in reality, a little bit class clowny, a little bit fun and games, it's just like, hang on, you're nothing like that. Yeah. And the reason that I started doing that is because someone signed up to work with me. We sat down for our first one-to-one call, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so effing stupid, I forgot to go do this. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were like that. I didn't know you were that kind of person. I was like, oh yeah, laid back, everything's very informal with me. And they're like, oh, I couldn't tell that from all your social media. And I was like, hang on a minute. If people want to invest in me as a personal brand, I think they need to know who I am. Yeah, so you've got to let that personality shine through. So I think it's getting that middle ground between being completely unprofessional and having a good reputation, but also not just being shirts and tie, and actually showing some personality and standing out, because you don't want to blend into everybody else. Everybody else is boring. No. And there's only one of you two, isn't there? There's only one Ash and Josh duo. Yeah, and it's taken some time for us to, I mean, we're still learning what that middle ground is. I mean, even with the podcast, where months ago when we started it, we go unscripted and it would just go off the rails and it wasn't getting the right points across, and there's the same for social media content, and yeah, we're still learning where we're going. And I think that's what people need to understand for their own development as well, there's never just a final answer. I think some people that potentially settle that there is a final answer and they've got it all right, is
a bad position to put yourself into, because I see some people from the influencer perspective that some of the stuff they're doing, and I'm not going to criticize because I can't say that I've done much better. I can't say I've done as worse, but you look at it from like, I can look at it from a creator's perspective and go, I get where you're coming from. Do you? Fair enough. And then I'm lucky enough that I can take it from a brand perspective and go, would our company work with that creator? I'll go, well, personally I would, but the brand wouldn't. The business doesn't care.
Brand standards are important.
Brand standards are all there. Like the business doesn't care what my personal feelings and opinions are about working with that. Business is like, no, that's not good for a reputation. That doesn't align with what the statement we're trying to put across, what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, in that sense, you've got to be able to show your personality. It really will help your brand, but it can also be the biggest,
can be a downfall,
biggest detriment. Yeah,
it can definitely be a detriment. But I think I don't mind being polarized a little bit. Like, I know that I'm completely different to anyone else in my industry. Like, not many people will drop the things or say the things that I say on my podcast and they'll be like, oh my God, that's so unprofessional. But if you think I'm unprofessional, then cool, I'm not for you. Like, I'm not a good fit for you, and that's fine. But I think the best quote I ever heard it was a Jeff Bezos quote. And he said that your brand is what people would say about you at a cocktail party, like what you want to be known for. Like, when you're not there, what would people say about your brand? And I think once you think about that and you get the pen and paper out and you think, well, actually, what do we want to be known for? And I thought you guys had like dead clear on that, because I was actually reaching out to you to originally case study your business, if you remember.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys agree, I think it'd be a great topic to go into. Would you amount the success of your brand to all of the work that you did before you released Half Step, before anybody knew what Half Step was? You guys had built an audience, you'd engaged an audience, you had people who knew who you are, they were familiar with you, and they were behind your message, and obviously you do a lot for male equestrians and representing men in the sport. So would you say that would amount to the success of your brand and where you are and how you're getting it and how you're building it up?
I would say yes and no. And I say that because blowing up on social media and not having an understanding of social media can be extremely detrimental. It put us in situations we never experienced before. So yes, it was brilliant. We'd go to places and be recognised, but not necessarily in the demographic that we were aiming for. So our content may have been great and might have been doing really well, but it wasn't converting to sales. And this is what was really interesting when I was listening to your podcast, where you spoke on the topic of a viral video won't make your brand. I think people would look at us and go, yeah, okay, Half Step's been fantastic, but I think now Half Step stands by itself. We try not to get involved. We don't actually want to be a part of it. And also it's why we had to adjust the content that we do, because I don't think people would necessarily separate our personalities on our own private page on Instagram to how we are when we run Half Step. And those are very, very separate things. How we associate ourselves when we're with Half Step, we are predominantly having conversations with young lads on trade stands that are suffering from bullying, really struggling for finding riding clothes, haven't probably told their parents that they're being bullied in school. So we're having to be extremely serious and take on a lot of pressure for us, because we're having conversations that people are putting their story, their experiences onto us, and we're having to adapt to that. And that was something that we never necessarily thought Half Step would be. So it became something bigger than we set out for it to be. Yeah,
it's similar to on that the pressure of that. It's almost like Jordan Peterson. I can't remember who asked him. It was like, don't you think it's incredible that all of these people across the world will come up to you and they can relate to you and tell you all their problems? And I think maybe on a Joe Rogan podcast, and he just started crying, and it was kind of like, well, no, and yes. He was like, yes, it's fantastic because I've achieved something, but at the same time, he was like, I see that darkness of humanity. I see what these people want to do. That's opened that door and window. And it's the same for us in that sense of what that has led to and generated. Is it's amazing that what we've done prior has given us a platform to do what we do. But it's hard because it opens that world of, we see how bad it is at the moment and how bad it has been for a long, long while. Hence why we were trying to change it. So it does have its toll, doesn't it?
To a certain extent, I wish that Half Step was set up and we were behind the scenes.
Oh, 100%.
I wish we weren't known, because
really interesting.
The pressure that apply, like for example, if we go to Hickstead with our partners because we're either supporting our partners competing or we're just going for a day out, we walk around and we will probably be recognised, and that's brilliant. That's lovely. It's really nice to see people that have engaged with our content because we understand that we wouldn't be where we are if it weren't for those people. But at the same time, if I've had a bad day, I might not be in a position where I want to necessarily talk.
You always have to be available, don't you?
I remember I was going through a difficult period in my life. I'm working on a trade stand. I'm representing Half Step. Not only am I there trying to obviously promote our brand, but people come up and interact with us because of our personal brand too. I'm going through a bad time in my life and I'm having to act like everything is fine because I want them to go away with an extremely good memory of me.
Yeah,
but 5
it
minutes
can damage
before,
your brand if someone gets a bad impression of you and they
100%.
can tell everybody, oh, well, Josh was really horrible, he was really rude, he was this, he was that.
Yeah, 5 minutes before I was crying before having to go and have a photo with a woman and her child. But they couldn't know that I had that.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe if I wasn't necessarily that public figure, and by no means do I think I'm a public figure in any way, shape or form, but I wouldn't have to be held to that high standard. If I make the slightest mistake, like I have done on social media or what have you, say things in the wrong context, it gets taken out of context, we suffer massive consequences for that because we're in the limelight. And that's fine. It's our own fault for being on social media, and by putting our content out there, we are putting ourselves out to be judged. That's the consequence of what we do. But it doesn't mean that it's easy.
No, by no means no.
And I think that's been a huge learning curve for both of us. And it's probably only taken us to this sort of last year where we've gone, you know what, we've done this for 2-3 years now. Let's take a step back and evaluate what we've done. And yes, okay, we're adults, but we were still relatively young when we blew up on social media. I think I might be 21, 22, very similar age. We've been doing it 3-4 years now.
It's weird, don't where that time's gone. That it feels like literally yesterday, and then you look back on it and you've already been on 4 or 5 years on social media, and you're like, right, okay.
But like you think as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, the mistakes that you make in day-to-day life, people you associate yourselves, we've done that, but we put it on social media for everyone to know what we've done wrong.
Yeah.
And that has been, I hate how I portrayed myself initially on social media. I hate it because that's not how I would want to be deemed by many people, because we also used to play off the fact that when people would meet us, they'd be like, oh, you're not like who you are on social media, and we'd be like, oh, that works to our advantage. Yeah, great, that does, probably, because people have this expectation of us and we are so different to what they think we're going to be. But I would hate for someone to have seen me on social media, never have met me, and be like, oh, that Josh Hill, he's egotistical, he loves himself, etc., etc. Because I would like to think people who know me know that isn't true.
Yeah, I get that. Because if I look back on who I was as like a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old, like, ooh, wouldn't want that on social media. That was a little bit crazy time of my life. But yeah, like obviously, like I think, but if you don't look back on some of your content and go, then you've not grown, have you? So looking back and being able to go, oh my God, what was I doing? It shows how much you've moved, it shows how much you've grown, and it shows how far you've come. So I wouldn't overly stress it.
Yeah, I think a nice topic to parallel with that, which bringing it to the business side that you can consult with, is we have in the last couple of months, especially 4 or 5 months maybe, really honed the skill of being able to pivot, knowing where to cut your losses and where to invest your time and energy, and also forecasting what it's going to look like. We did that with our social media, going from, I mean, we were on a continual climb. I reckon what we've got now, we could be double if we're just stuck at doing what we're doing, but we saw the glass ceiling of it and went, this isn't us, we need to change. Everyone's doing what we're doing now, where's the next thing? Podcasts really in this format aren't sort of being utilised enough in this industry, so this is where we went to. So the question I've got is that something you see when going into speaking and consulting with businesses, one of the elements they don't have honed down as a skill so much as pivoting and knowing where and to cut their losses and where to continue.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people in the equestrian industry are heavily reliant on word of mouth. So most of the farriers that I work with, unless they obviously are, they've blown up on TikTok and they're getting loads of followers and they've put a load of energy into it, they don't really focus on the social media. They don't really put any energy into their marketing because they've been recommended by a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, which is great until you have a bad experience and then you trash your reputation through a friend of a friend of a friend. Because I always say that your clients are your biggest advocates of your business, like they're the best salespeople for your business, and you will be known by your clients' results or your customers' satisfaction rate. So they're always things to focus on. And what I implement in all businesses straight away is KPIs, the key performance indicator. Quite simply lets you know how the business is performing, what's going well, what's going terribly. And I'm not one of those people who, I know a lot of people who are like, yeah, if that doesn't work, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going. Don't waste your time. If something's not working and you've put your whole heart into it and you've given it a good go for 6 months, being consistent with it, it's not working, scrap it. Find something else, try something else. I'm not saying scrap it completely, but put your efforts into something else, see if that works, and then do the full rotation. So continuous improvement, obviously, you're a big fan of it yourself, aren't you? Always improving, always adapting. Find out what's working. Something can always be better. You can always make things better. And so specifically to answer your question, like what was it you mean? Like they're not putting their efforts into certain areas?
I think the skill itself is knowing when to pivot, knowing when something isn't right.
Yeah.
And some people can be their own downfall of. It's a real double-edged sword because at one point, on one hand, you need to know when to pivot. We've done it multiple times within Half Steps Life, which as a consumer would not even see what it is we've pivoted on. And then on the other hand, you've got the likes of Ben Francis and Jim Sharp. Absolutely right. If you've got a vision and you're an entrepreneur and you are trying to do something that's which is a breakthrough in this industry, you can't ask anyone and say, what do you think? Or what's the data to suggest this is going to work? Because it hasn't been done. You have to drag it from the dead. You have to literally pull it to its destination. So it is that balance between, do people know when to go, look, there's no evidence to support this, but I know this is going to be what it's going to be, to do they know as well at the same time, this isn't working and I need to find the new direction?
I can't say it's specifically relevant to any businesses that I've worked with, because most of them are very standard businesses that have been done before. The one business I am working with that's quite different is they're an app for like body workers and physiotherapists, and it's getting people into the 21st century. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's a business problem. Like the business, they have the product, they have the service, it's elite, it's fantastic stuff, but it's dragging the industry with it. And I think the thing that a lot of equestrian business owners are struggling with right now is just moving forward. Like, get rid of the paper notes. We live in a digital world now. You don't need a boot full of paper to go out and rub a horse when you can do it on an iPad, you can do it on your phone, you can do it on a laptop. You can make your life so much easier and shorten your admin time and not spend all your Friday nights work until dumb o'clock in the morning doing paperwork and doing all that boring catch-up stuff. So I think this is the direction that I think a lot of people are struggling with, is they're struggling to let go of those diaries and, oh, well, it works for me and I don't need to change anything. It's like, yeah, but you don't realise how much easier your life's going to be until you do change. So I'd say the equestrian industry is very slow to adapt to change and to pick up on those pivots.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. A lot of people are just scared to invest in something. So obviously, like, my client has an amazing app for body workers where you finish your treatment and you can share it with your clients, so they can contact you through the app, so they can message you through it. So you're not scrolling through WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, finding out where everyone is. So it centralizes the messages. It makes everyone's life so much easier, but everyone looks at it and goes, I don't really want to pay, X amount each month for it. My paper diary works just as well. And it's like, but you need to try it and realize how much time it's going to save you. Because for me, I don't know about you guys, if I had to pay £30 a month, £40 a month for something that's going to save me, I don't know, 30 hours, 40 hours a month, it's a no-brainer. That's £1 an hour. And it's saving me, like, I charge upwards of £70 an hour. So, 30, 40 hours a month to me, it's a lot of money. And I think it's a lot of people just not spending money or not wanting to change because they haven't seen the outside perspective. They haven't seen how it works.
It's funny you're saying that, because sometimes when I've looked at, again, I can sort of relate to doing something different with what we've done with Half Step, that I feel that if we actually done a woman's brand, it would have been easier.
Do you think?
Because it's not different.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I think quite the opposite.
Because I see some of the brands that have like come out and it's just repetitive, more and more women's brands, doing very similar things to some of the brands that have been there a long time. But you're just like...
But are they performing well?
It's difficult to tell from behind the scenes, but I look at what we've done and where we are with Half Step. I'm like, I think so many of... Because we're always having to try things, right? Whereas as a woman's brand, you know what works. If you can make a slight adaptation to a piece of clothing and maybe, I don't know, make it so that the pockets are easier for a phone, you've just adapted a product that's working well anyway. Whereas for us, everything we do is trial and error.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly trying to do something different and evolve it and be ahead of our time. And that has almost been... I think that's
going to pay off for you in the long run, though, I won't lie.
Completely.
Hopefully.
And I completely agree with that. But I also think so many of our problems as well has been we've always planned for the long term so much. Okay, let's do this. Let's put this in place for 10 years' time. That it is also become detrimental to the short-term effect.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so difficult to try and plan for the long term when you have to, but you haven't got a financial arsenal to draw on. Like we weren't, didn't have an angel investor from the start. We've not come from parents with millions of pounds in the bank. It was literally, Josh came to me with money that he'd saved up from riding. I was dead skint at the time, so I didn't have anything to start any capital put into it. And then through the times, I've then at points had more that I could put into it that's needed, and it's just ate up. And trying to then pre-plan the future, which we need to do as a brand that is groundbreaking in what we're trying to do, but you forget the problems that are here tomorrow, and then trying to roll that into the next day and then the next day and the next day, and then you think, well, I've not solved that, but I'm already in the future that I was planning for. But that middle bit gets completely neglected.
It's the systems. You need the systems.
Yeah,
and the processes.
So, but on that, I completely agree with what Josh says. I think that it is a little bit easier for women brands because it is similar to that saying where if you have a Coca-Cola vending machine on its own, it will make sales. If you put then a Pepsi machine next to it, it's not going to lose sales. It's just going to optimize sales because people all of a sudden have got choice. And the minute you give people choice, they are then directed to actually make a decision. Rather than it be a yes, I want to buy it, or a no, I don't, to do I want to buy this or do I want to buy this? The question is, which one are you going to buy?
You see this all the time in marketing. So, when you go to the cinema and you can choose between like the small popcorn for $2.99, or you can choose the large popcorn for $7.99, or the medium popcorn for £6. You suddenly want the big one because it looks like a bargain compared to this one. They never wanted you to buy the middle one anyway. It was just a decoy.
Yeah.
But choice, it's amazing. Like because I love sales psychology, like going deep into all of that, like what makes people buy, what makes people convert and stuff. It really, really blows my mind. Like all the things that you wouldn't even think of, like, oh my God, I've fallen for that so many times. And obviously like the old like 99 one, like because you think your brain just looks at the first part of it. So, I use it myself in my pricing. Like, I always go like 9.7 rather than the nearest 100 because people do see it and they just go, well, yeah, it's not that much. And it's the psychology behind these things and giving people choices. It makes them feel empowered to make a decision then. That's really cool. But I would say you've got an easier job than jumping into the women's industry because who's not launched a clothing brand recently? Like, I think it was a topic I covered in one of my podcasts recently. Like, if you're thinking of starting a women's equestrian clothing brand, don't.
Yeah, it's
just
not
don't.
the time to do so.
Yeah, I guess it's like, it's different perspectives, isn't it? Because we're sort of seeing it firsthand, and every decision that we make is a risk. Every product we release, everything we do is a risk because there's no evidence to back what we do. Whereas that, I'd say The only thing that I see beneficial from a woman's brand is you kind of know what to expect. There's not many different directions other than maybe adding more technical like capabilities to the clothing or what have you to take in a different direction.
Yeah, it's an industry that's been exhausted.
Yeah,
though. Like,
exactly.
I know Erin Williams said on one of her podcasts recently, like everybody is just running out of ideas, and she's been copied. Like the big brands are being copied. Like how many people can sell mulberry breeches? Like come on, you get choice and then you get saturation. Like if anybody is listening to this and thinking of starting a clothing brand, just wait 5 years till everyone's like hopped off the bandwagon and then do it.
I mean, we have, this is biased because we have a close relationship to them, but on that I think a massive bit of admiration for Jordan with Aztec Diamond, because what they have done truly, I think, out of the majority of the brands, have been the driving force of change, and I'm going to say this word wrong, innovativity.
It's a hard word.
It's a hard word, especially with dyslexic.
Innovation.
That one. And recently, I don't know if you saw a news article that basically Jordan's partner, which was her mum in the business, they've bought out, and they've had other people come on board, and they're now preaching that between mainstream high street fashion, which was sort of the direction, which is similar to us, what we want to do long term, but they are there now and they're in the moment doing that. And I look at that as a Aztec Diamond, for me, I think is the leading female brand in making that crossover to mainstream fashion and the equestrian world, and it's bloody impressive.
I think Jules did quite a good job of that as well, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. I can't say whether Aztec Diamond was specifically the first women's company to start with riding leggings, but I know Jordan was the first person to design riding leggings with pockets. So I know that was it, and that's what changed the company and changed everything to it's now why every riding pair of leggings designed by a female equestrian brand has pockets in, was because of what Jordan did. And I think that is like full credit to what she's done there.
Yeah, it's found a gap in the market though, isn't it? Like, found a gap in the market, because I know that when I used to ride a lot more than I do now, like I was frustrated. Like you go to put your phone in the pocket and the pocket's that deep. Like what's the point in that? Like designed for like the 2007 like little flip phones. And it's just like, well, this industry needs to adapt. It needs to get into it, and someone needs to do something. And then someone does do something, and then everyone's like, hang on, that's really cool, let me do that. And I think there's always going to be an element of copying, but if you want to dive into a saturated market just because everyone else is, I think you're a little bit silly. Yeah,
it's not the time to be just doing it willy-nilly, especially the women's side. It's going to be, you've got to either have capital and risk, and the risk has got to be very low for you, that if it doesn't pay off, it's not going to affect your life. Whereas if you have saved up your life savings of, say, it's 15, 20,000, and you're going to go, right, women's clothing brand, equestrian, I can say, that would be a dreadful decision. Yeah. If you don't mind burning that, and that may come around, it may pay off, you can definitely make that work, but it's not worth the risk to reward ratio.
No, this is where business planning comes in, and your forecasting, like we were saying earlier. Like if you can't, because a lot of people like go, do you know what, I want to leave my job, I want to go work in the horse industry, whether you want to be a saddle fitter or a physio, or whether you want to launch a clothing brand or be a riding instructor. You need to sit down and you need to realistically look at the numbers and be like, right, what am I charging? What am I selling? How much am I selling it for? Who am I selling it to? And how many do I think I'm going to sell in this year? What are my costs? What are my overheads? What expenses am I going to have going out? Right, okay, so now look at that, and now look at my bottom line. What am I actually coming home with? Oh, look, you're looking on track to make about £1,000 in 1 year after you've paid everything off. Is it worth it? Is it? Obviously, I know that with some businesses, you set them up, it might take you 2, 3, and even like 3-4 years to start hitting some profit, which is fine if you're going for like the long-term goal. But if you're never going to pull a profit, if you're never going to make the sales, it's not a risk that I'd go into. But I do think entrepreneurship, especially when you are doing something different, like you guys, risk is an element. You are going to have to take risks.
That's half of the fun.
With no risk comes no reward. It's like a comfort zone's a bad place to be stuck in. And especially when I went into what I wanted to do, like when I was like, hang on a minute, if I diversify into just equestrian businesses, I'm like slashing my market by something chronic, because I've gone from all businesses to a tiny little industry, really. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I making a mistake? And I remember the day that I like scrapped all my old branding, scrapped all my old logos, and I was just like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And it was just like such a risk. And then like I hit like a plateau with like 3 months without sales. And I was like, I'm giving up. I'm shutting down this business. And then in like the last 12 weeks, it's kind of really, really taken off. And it's all paid off really, really well.
Wow, that is incredible. But again, like when we were talking about, I think a huge part of it is keeping it simple, because I think for a period of time with Half Step, the message was complicated.
Oh yeah, we
overcomplicated it because we were trying to think of so many different ideas. Okay, right, we're doing this, and this, and this, and this. Boom, boom, boom. Then everyone's like, what is Half Step?
Yeah.
And it's taken us a while to actually take a step back again and be like, okay.
I think at one point we had like 6 different collections planned with like for different products, and we'd spent ages on it and money on it, and we just got to the point where we're like, why have we done this? Like, it makes no sense, and now we've just wasted all of this time, all of this financial resource on doing so, which is a positive, because I never look at our financial losses as a negative.
Better to do it now and limit the financial investment than to go all into it and then 6 months be like, hang on, this isn't working, and you've poured more money into it. So at least you nipped it in the bud. Yeah,
100%. And I think that, but like you say, with your journey with it plateauing and then boom, hitting it overnight, everyone likes to say you're an overnight success, but they don't see the years of graft.
Yeah,
and I think that's something, if you're struggling with your business right now mentally,
it's mentally exhausting. I literally remember, like, I don't know why, like, it's formed a core memory in my head, but I remember like going down the drive at the end of the stables and thinking like, I need to go home and work. And I remember just this feeling in the back of my head, like, I don't want to work. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go onto company's house and I'm shutting down the company. And in fact, I did shut down my first company, and now I'm a sole trader. So still going, but yeah, like that day, like, yeah, shutting down the company. I'm not doing it anymore. It's not working. And I beat myself up. And after like 2 days, I was like, sort yourself out. Come on. Yeah. We're doing this.
And people won't see that as well.
Yeah.
They see the face, and it's very similar again to social media. They see what you put out there, and then they don't know you personally. And it's the same for your business and same for the brand. They see the website, the logoing on social media. They know what it stands for. They see the product, but they don't know your personality behind it. And we had it very similarly at the beginning. People think it runs really smoothly. I think it was one of our first or second batches of breeches that we got in. All of the sizing tags were one size marked up, so a medium had a large in it, and a large had an extra large in it, which, bear in mind, this note was right at the beginning. It was right at the beginning. It was before we launched, and
2 days before
we launched, and this was like hundreds of units. We looked at this. We had the delivery came like at 12 o'clock, say. And then it took us maybe about till 4 o'clock that I looked at it. We'd left the office.
No, I remember you phoned me. So it arrived, you were in the office and I was out riding.
Yeah.
So I came in after, because obviously at this point Ash was still new. So he wanted to, like, he couldn't categorically say the sizes of breeches because he didn't really know what breeches were at that point still.
No clue.
I had to be in there, and finally, like about 4 p.m, we worked out that the sizes were wrong.
We've gone through every unit and was like, this is wrong on every unit.
So now we have like 30 hours to launch,
if that. We were in a van 40 minutes after Josh had come around at like 4.
No, it was later than that, because we were driving through the night, so we had to wait until we actually, because we had we had to load up, I don't know, 25 boxes worth of breeches after we were able to borrow a van. Yeah. Which put us back. So I don't think we actually left the office till 7:30 that night.
Yeah, drove then all the way to essentially a different country to then get this, because we didn't want to just leave it to a DHL or UPS to get all of these, because then that's another day before that even gets picked up. They've then got to be changed over. They literally swapped hands, and through the night were de-stitching and re-stitching, and then for us to then drive all the way back to get them. It was just 2 days of just brutal. And we've got it all recorded. This is the other thing as well. We have the last 4 years for 3 years, recorded behind the scenes, which has never seen the light of day. And I mean, like, one of the long-term things is we definitely want to release a documentary in about 3 or 4 years' time, when it is like a unicorn business, and go, this is how we did it, this is the shit bits, this is where you got to get through, this is there is a lot of content,
shit there,
a lot of crying, and there's a lot of stuff that we've not spoke about on podcasts, not on publicly, but is all documented, that people would go, what the fuck, that makes no sense, how has that happened with a bit of luck? So yeah, the point is, people don't see behind the face of it. They don't see behind the business. Like you've gone through that stress of, where's the clientele going to come from? Do I want to continue with this business? And no, it is really normal. It is part of the process.
So normal. And like, I make a point of like pulling back the curtain and be like, do you know what? Like, yes, I have consistent sales now, but what you didn't see was me like working my arse off to study for a degree and a master's at the same time. You didn't see me raising my 2 kids at the same time. You didn't see me, well, my partner's at work sometimes for like 12 hours a day plus. So like managing the kids, managing the business, managing the horses. And that is why when I scrapped my old business name and then rebranded as the Equestrian Business Specialist, became more of a personal brand, I've really pulled back the curtain and like what actually goes on, what I do, and how I've built this brand, and like the struggles that I've went through. Like, I know what it's like when you've freshly qualified and you don't know where your money's going to come from, because everybody's already working with someone, or you feel like you're convincing people, you're chasing people down and convincing people to work with you. And I would say that sales is very, very much like catching that stubborn horse from the field, the horse that doesn't want to be caught, and the horse that just pisses off in the opposite direction. And you chase the horse around the field and the horse just keeps going really further. And then you pull out something that the horse actually wants, or something that the customer actually wants, and all of a sudden you stop chasing and the horse comes over to you and takes the carrot, you put the head collar on, take the horse, put the horse in the stable. Amazing, simple, done. Exactly the same with sales. The harder you chase, the harder you try and convince people, the more people are going to be like, I don't like being sold to, and disappear. But when you actually put something in front of them that they actually want, they come to you, they take it.
I on the sales note, I was listening to you earlier on your podcast, and what I found a really interesting point, which is a real difficult one to have that conversation with yourself, is about pricing, and about where you set your prices, and is it okay to charge more, and justifying that. And the reason I specifically, when relating with Harstep, why I found that really interesting to listen to, is because we definitely made mistakes at the start of the business. We would price it too much and then too low, and we had, or in the middle, but where's the profit? Do we take? And we hadn't really sat down and worked out, okay, well,
but who's your people?
Exactly. You're looking at who's your target audience, what are you trying to get across, and then it's even down to like, we'd look at maybe how much it takes to make a product, but then we wouldn't look at, okay, well, what about shipping that product, sampling that product, the packaging of that product, the poly bags of that product, the hang tags of that product, what's the import and VAT looking like at the moment on that product, and then that all starts to add up, and that's just your floor. Where is your sort of in between that you've not even put your margins onto it, and then you start to go, well, actually, is this correct? Is it right? So what's the best advice and that you could offer from when it comes to pricing a service or pricing a product in the equestrian world?
I love pricing. So pricing is one of my favourite things. So when I first started pricing and I set my prices, I charged absolutely nothing for my services, because a little voice in the back of my head was like, no one will ever pay you for business advice. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, literally doing a degree and a master's in it. What do you mean I don't know what I'm talking about? But I always struggle with that. No one's going to buy my product. No one's going to buy my service. And I think a lot of people do feel like that, especially like freshly qualified people first stepping out into an industry, people who've got a new product are going to have that, why would anyone buy from me? First of all, get that out of your head and actually look at the cold hard facts. So go around, look at your industry. What is the average that's being charged? And I want you to look at this in a very cold way. So it's not that so-and-so is charging so much, so should I, or they're charging less, so should I, they're charging more, I should up my prices. I want you to look at it really, really cold. Then what I want you to do is go away and look at all your financial information, like you said. So I want you to realise, what are your expenses? what are you paying yourself? What are your staffing costs? What are your importing costs? What are your raw material costs if you've got a tangible product? If you're offering a service, like how far are you traveling to offer the service? If you're a physio, are you working within a 50-mile radius, a 10-mile radius? Like, what are your expenses? How much fuel are you putting in your car to get there? Like, all of the things that you don't think about. Like, how much is it to service your car? All of these things. Put it all down. Now, I want you to look at how much you should actually be charging. So what should you be charging? Are you going for the top end clients? Are you working with Grand Prix level horses? Or are you wanting to sell a product to somebody who has a lot of money? Who is your people? What is your target audience? What's their budget? Because I can guarantee you that like Louis Vuitton are not pricing their handbags the same way that Primark are, because they don't have the same people. So they're not trying to compete with each other. So that's the first thing that I want people to look at, is like actually do the market research on your people, not on somebody else's people, because there'd be no point Primark doing market research on Louis Vuitton, would there? It'd be completely pointless, waste of time. And then decide like how much money do you actually want to charge? Like your prices, they're up to you, and nobody gets to dictate to you what is too much. Everything is worth what its purchaser will pay for it. Like there's certain horses out there that you could give me $5,000 and I still wouldn't take it. And there's people out there paying like 20 grand for them. And I'm like, I wouldn't have that if you paid me. It's worth what you want to pay for it. So I think once you sort of get yourself out of that weird, icky, oh, no one will pay that for this, and actually set your price and confidently understand why, because of your expenses, because of the amount of money that you want to earn. And I think one of the biggest things that I would love to clear up for people is profit's not a dirty word. We often hear like people saying, oh, that yard owner's not very good. They just care about profit. Well, yeah, because they're running a business. They should care about profit. They should care about making money. They should care about paying their bills and paying themselves. And like, what's wrong with wanting to earn money? Like, I think that's a big thing for people to clear up, because we have like these icky feelings about money and greed and all of that stuff, and it's bad to want more. I'll openly admit, like, money is a huge motivator for me. I didn't come from a place with a lot of money. Now I've got a consistent, steady flow and a comfortable flow of money. And that does motivate me. Like, keeping that is a huge motivator for me. Like, why is that a bad thing? Why is it bad for me to want to give my kids a nice life? Why is it bad for me to want to keep my horses in the best care that they can have and be able to afford their vet bill without thinking twice about it? Like, my horse recently went off and had a 4-figure vet bill, and the vet was like, oh, she's not insured. Is it okay? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Go for it. Do what you need to do. Don't let cost be a factor that slows you down.
Yeah. It's
and what's
really
wrong with
interesting that.
But isn't that society norms being put onto people and making them feel in a way that money is a bad thing to think about? Money, you shouldn't think about what money, you should think about X, Y, Z, and that's put onto everyone. And like you say, especially in this industry, when you're talking about like farriers, like not adjusting their prices for 10 years.
Yeah,
but
my farrier still charges like 25 quid for a barefoot trim. Like, what are you doing, lad? Like, put those prices up. I've been paying you that for 15 years.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It's not sticking to cost of living, inflation, to nothing.
Well, you think inflation-wise, that £25 10 years ago is probably the equivalent of £15 nowadays. And that's what people don't realise, is actually with inflation, the money devalues over a period of time. So that money that is paid 10 years ago, he's earning less.
Do you think
now
it's difficult for someone to take that scenario as at face value? A farrier has been shoeing your horse for 10 years at £25 an hour, and inflation kicks in, and really they should be up in that, say, 5% each year, just to keep up with the times. And then all of a sudden they decide to, on the 8th, 9th, 10th year, look, I need to up my prices, etc. Have you found a consistency out of interest with your research of it's those long-term customers can be the hardest ones because they don't want to adapt to change, and they go,
yes and no. Yes and no. So if I'm going to up my prices and I just say that I used to charge 70 quid for a set of shoes and I'm now charging £90 for a set of shoes, which is, I think, is a fine jump if you haven't put your prices up in 15 years. I think that's perfectly acceptable. But if I just say it was 70, it's now 90, you're going to be pissed off with me. If I say I've not put my prices up in 10 years, my raw material costs have gone up, the cost of me buying like the metal or buying the shoes in has gone up, the cost of the gas for me to run my furnace has gone up. I've had to buy a new van because, you know, my old one had depreciated. I needed a new van, so that sent me back 10 grand or 12 grand, 15 grand, whatever the cost of a van is these days, whatever they've bought. If you can actually justify why you've put your prices up. And it's not just to, because I think initially we only look at it from that customer's perspective. Like when a price goes up, we go, well, why have they done that? They just want more money. Yeah, they do. But where's that money going? If you can justify why you've put the price up, people are going to take it a lot better. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being transparent or, a little bit transparent about what's going on with your business. Say my operating costs have gone up. This has gone up. I'm not just taking your money off you because I want to or because I want to exploit you. I'm doing it to run my business and keep my business going so that I can continue shoeing horses for the future. You know what I mean? Like a farrier who's been in the game like 10, 20 years, he might even need to invest in some physio for his back because he's bent over all day. Do you know what I mean? It could be anything. Like all of these costs that are going into his business has to be reflected in his price. And I think the more transparent you are about it, the more people go, oh, right, yeah, that makes sense.
I remember there's a story about a artist, and he was in a coffee shop and he was doodling on a bit of paper, and he finished his coffee, he walked off, he threw that bit of paper in the bin. A woman grabbed it out of the bin, ran to him and said, please, could I keep that? And he said, give me £20,000 and it's yours. And she said, you did that in 5 minutes and you threw it in the bin. And he was like, it took me 40 years to be able to do that in 5 minutes. People forget about the amount of time that you've sacrificed. Like that farrier, of course, he shod how many more sets of shoes and trimmed so many more horses in that period of time. Riders have invested in training. They're better. They've improved over that period of time.
Yeah,
so of course their services is going to cost more over a period of time. No different to as half step grows. If we're using better fabrics, better materials, the prices will get higher because we're improving the whole time.
If you go to a better seamstress, if you get a better manufacturer or whatever it is, whatever's going into it, it might be that you guys decide to divulge in a business course, or you might invest in yourselves in whatever other way you deem fit. But that should be reflected in your prices as well. And I think if you can say to people, like, I've not just put the prices up for the fun of it, I've done it because of X, Y, and Z, then people just go, oh, right, okay. And I think another thing as well is, like, people don't really think about your prices as much as you do. And that's a really, really big one. No one's overthinking them as much as you are. Like, if someone's going on your website to buy something, are they there every day? Probably not. Like, every 3 to 6 months, I'd say that someone buys some new breeches or droppers or something.
Yeah.
Can they remember that they used to cost, £70 and that they now cost £75? Can they really remember? Do they remember, or do they just think, oh, right, yeah, prices go up and down, things change.
Yeah, that's just the price.
Life goes on, yeah, that's just the price. And there is going to be people who click on it and go, no, I can't afford that, that's not for me. So they go find the cheaper brand. And there's going to be people who click on it and go, no, that sounds really cheap. Even though, do you know what I mean? It could be £100, people say they're too cheap.
Yeah, you don't sort of tend to recognise that, do you?
Perfect, it's a bargain, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'll come out of Aldi and I'll say, Chilo, this is taking the piss. This has gone up. And if you used to ask me what it's gone up to, I don't know. But I know it's gone up. But I still buy it either way. And if I didn't want it, I just wouldn't buy it, I guess. Yeah, it's that competition side of it. And on what you were saying, just I think a nice direction as well is about the artist relation and about the time people put into, say, products, etc. On an influencer side, I think this is... So there's two elements to where I'm taking this with. Is an influencer side and a brand side. I think in the equestrian industry, you've got brands that aren't utilising influencer marketing the way they should do. I think influencer marketing is on a dying way out on the mainstream because it was done at the time that it was supposed to be done. But as we all know in this conversation, the equestrian world is quite some years behind. So actually that door is still open for equestrian brands to use and utilise influencer marketing, which they should do. At the same time, they don't understand with that 40 years worth of drawing to be able to draw a picture in 5 minutes. They don't see an influencer creator creating content every day for 5 days a week for 4 years to generate a following of, say, 100,000 followers. So when the brand goes, oh, I'm going to just give you something for free and that'll be enough. Yes, you're doing the right thing, but you're also forgetting when an influencer turns around and goes, I'm going to charge you for... and I'm not drawing off any specifics or any previous things I've worked, just off the top of my head, if it was going, right, I'm going to charge you £1,000 to do 5 posts on this product, and they go, what? That's ridiculous
it's
money.
Also, they don't think about the damage to your following. Your following might not want to be sold to. So if you're there saying, buy this, I don't know, off the top of my head, a fly spray, buy this fly spray, they're like, this isn't your normal content. Ugh, that's annoying, I'm unfollowing. You could lose 1,000 followers.
Big risk.
Because,
I'd
so why
never
would you
thought
not?
of that before.
Why
about
would you
followers.
not want to charge this money? Because it's a risk to your following, because your following might not enjoy the product, or they might not agree with the product, whatever. They just don't want to be sold to. They might think that you're sounding too salesy. They might think you're a sellout. So you're risking that. And also there's your time. And the fact, like you say, that you've spent hours, years finding out what works on social media, finding out what doesn't. I think like influencers get like a bad rap. Like there was literally like a fitness influencer, because me and my partner were in London yesterday and we were outside Buckingham Palace, like just sitting down having a little snack, and like there was a fitness influencer, and like my other half was like, oh, bloody influencers, oh, just fannying around on social media. And I was like, yeah, this is their job and they get paid for it, just like you get paid to do your job. And what, they're not hurting anybody. They're just doing something, and they're putting their work in and they're doing that effort. And I love to see people like out there doing their thing, making their money. Like, I don't care what you do. If you're making your money, like, I'm proud of you.
Yeah, and things as well on that other point is, the reason you'd be paying something like that is you could, as a brand, go and say, spend that £1,000 on Facebook ads, but that £1,000 isn't directly converting to sales, because you might have to spend, say, £400 on that doing a data reach, finding people that have like even just stopped to look at it and scroll off, and then the pixels going, okay, well that's interesting, they might be the right people. So then you've spent another £400 on retargeting those people, and then they might then click on something you've then re-put out, and then maybe £200 on trying to convert them to sales. So actually what you've only done is spend £200 and potentially convert it to sales. You've had to do all of that investment to find that data, whereas you're going to an influencer, say you're developing a fly spray and you want to go to an equestrian influencer, and you go, right, well I know out of their 50,000 followers they're going to be equestrian, so I don't need to do the data. You basically have just
stepped into a target market. It's visibility. It's a visibility strategy, and
100%.
I'm all about it. You're putting yourself directly in front of your target audience and your people, and this is what another thing that I think people don't put enough time into. Where does your ideal client actually like hang out online? Because I love Instagram, and my ideal client is between Instagram and Facebook. I don't like LinkedIn, and I'm really lucky because my ideal client, there's a few of them on there and I could put more effort in. But if you're not actually going where they want to be, so if you're, I don't know, if my favorite platform was TikTok and I was to invest all of my time into TikTok, I'm going to have no sales, because my ideal client, who's like a 30, 40-year-old business owner, is not on TikTok, or they might be, but it's a small majority. So if, like you say, you can put yourself in front of an influencer who already has your target audience, it's worth investing in. And I say investing because it is an investment. It's marketing. And you can't expect to just go borrow someone else's audience that they've worked and be like, oh, well, it doesn't cost you anything to wear my t-shirt or spray my fly spray in your video. But it does.
Yeah.
And like it just makes a massive difference.
It's the time. People don't realise that. And how many times have we filmed something and you go, hi guys, welcome to shit, need to do that again. And it does catch up, and it's your time in doing it. Then it's the editing, then it's the transferring, does that look right? Then it's the proof. It does take a lot of time. And one bit of advice I want to give to equestrian brands or brands in general: if you gift an item, they don't have to legally post about it. And I think that is what is forgotten about.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
If you're gifting something because you're a nice person, you can't expect anything in return.
Yeah.
If you want to reach out to someone and say, let's strike a deal, would you be willing to promote something? Be transparent. Stop sending someone a t-shirt or some breeches or something just because you expect them to post it. And I think this giving with an expectation in return is terrible.
Yeah, go through an agency, make sure you get a contract signed, make sure it sounds scary, but it's not. That's what you want.
It's protecting you, yeah.
It protects everyone involved, and you've then got a structure of what what you want to do. I mean, I can think of something that we've worked with. I mean, we're going back years ago, and there was nothing in place. There was poor communication, and we weren't represented, and we just sort of went, are we doing the right thing? And it wasted so much time and energy and potentially money lost on our sides if we was to really sit down and think about it. But yeah, I think it's such a big market as well to grow your business in an equestrian space.
Yeah, definitely. And I think more people should definitely be reaching out to work with influencers, because that's why they're called influencers, isn't it?
Yeah, entirely so. Well, this podcast has been absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rhiannon. It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. If people have listened to this and would like to seek your help, where can they find you?
So I predominantly hang out on Instagram, and you can find me with the Equestrian Business Specialist if you search me there. You can find me on all podcasting networks if you search the Equestrian Business Podcast. I'm on Facebook, and you can also just catch up with me on Facebook personally if you want to add me a friend request. It's Rhiannon Amber Leavett.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you guys for listening. Hopefully people are now heading over to Rumble.
Yes.
And listening on all the other platforms that we put ourselves on that we still don't understand which ones they are.
Yeah, we have no, from this very businessy episode, we have no data, no analytics that we look into. We just post and hope.
We know Spotify and Apple Music, we do really well.
They blow up.
Yeah.
They do really well.
The others, we have no idea.
Not a clue. So
After
you're
this, we
listening,
will look into it.
yeah, make sure you're subscribed, notification bells on, and that's on all platforms. That's where you can see everything. Really appreciate you coming back in every week to tune in. We're still going strong, so thank you for listening to the Rein podcast.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Lovely.